would
Recording in
be
progress.
eliminated. They would look to hire a second equipment operator, which is a higher step and or higher graded step there with additional skill requirements. And then this position that had been the building and grounds technician would go into the rec department as a non-unionized position and serve needs of the rec department, especially during the I guess summer months when there's a lot of maintenance of the fields and grass cutting that occurs.
So does that mean there'll be two people working for free?
No.
Then who is the admin assistant? Is that being changed to this position?
Yes. That's the whole purpose of Bree's new job description, was to bring the roles that she would look for from this person who would also be doing outdoor work into what had been budgeted for, which was the administrative assistant.
Okay, so she's asking for something totally different than what she put in the budget and what was approved in the budget.
I don't know if I'd say it was totally different, but it's expanded roles and duties.
And how does that relate to the pay that you put in the budget? Is this person willing to do all that for whatever, 1,000 or something?
My understanding, and again, we can confirm this, is that the pay wouldn't increase because of this additional. It would be at the same level that was budgeted.
Yeah, I think we should revisit it.
Okay, well, we can certainly put this back onto the agenda for the 26th and have some more discussion.
Do others agree that it would be also beneficial to look at Bree's job description at the same time?
I think that's okay. Yeah, we need to understand the whole picture.
Right. Okay. Good. Any more on that? Okay. The next item is the Interregional Energy Coordinator Energy Committee work presentation. I think that we have Jeff here.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Hello. Yes, Jeff Grout, I am recognizing you. Would you
Oh.
like to address us? We had some questions based on the report that you had sent to us, and basically we want to know what's going on with your talking about Tracy Hall and plans that you may have put together, and particularly this company EEI that had previously been identified for a Tracy Hall project that was rejected by the voters.
Sure.
And
Yes. Yep.
last night we had some problems with our boiler. So this is an opportune time for you to tell us what you're thinking, because we need to be thinking about what we want to do with our money.
Absolutely. Yes. I'll be glad to bring that up. I do have a few slides that I could show if I can take the screen, or I can talk to the points, whatever is better for you at this point.
I think we can share our screen with you.
You should be a co-host. So
Let me know when you can see it.
We can see it.
yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Jeff Grout. If you worked with the previous Intermunicipal Regional Energy Coordinator, Jeff Martin, we made it easy. And I am also named Jeff. So I'll give you my contact information at the end here. And there we go. Just real quick, I'm going to take about 10 minutes. Is that enough time or too much? I know you're very busy tonight, but I'm going to try to talk through these pretty quickly, and we'll stop for questions. But there's a few key things I did want to bring up. And one is a municipal energy resilience project. It does have some funds available, and the funds fit very well with Tracy Hall. So I just wanted to give a quick background on that. And then we can get into some specifics with Tracy Hall. Excuse me. MERP. This is the name. This is what we call Municipal Energy Resilience Program. It originates from the Inflation Reduction Act, and it is a good time to be looking at these items because there's a lot of funds coming down and that will be available for municipalities in the very near future. So this is really a chance to get ready for that and to identify the projects that you'd like to work on that can benefit the town the most. And this certainly has some opportunities. So I just have a few quick slides. I'm not going to read everything. I passed this on to Brennan late in the day, and my intention was that you could see it after I showed it to you. So I hope this didn't contribute to the items that you got at the last minute, but if it did, the intent was to get it to you so you'd have it for reference afterwards. So you don't need to take notes. This is available to all of you at this point, but the reason we wanted to bring this up, the cash grants are about $500,000 each. It is designed for municipal buildings. It's specifically for weatherization and for replacing old fossil fuel heating systems. And again, that fits really well with Tracy Hall. So the criteria or what it does is there's 3 opportunities. This project is broken into 3 phases. And there's only one active right now, and that's the $4,000 mini grant. We have a whole presentation on this. We can give a lot more information on MERP itself going forward, but at this point, we do recommend that you apply for that grant. It can be used for a number of different things. It's a very easy application process, and it just gets you in the system for the larger grant. The second phase is an energy assessment. These are paid for by the state of Vermont. They have funds. They'll be hiring the auditors. They'll be scheduling the auditors. The town responsibility would be identifying the buildings that you would like to have audited that can apply for that will be applicable for this grant. Eligibility criteria, the number 1 criteria probably is energy burden. I don't want to, well, this could take a little time to get into, but basically this is the average price that your residents pay for fuel compared to the average income of the community. So it's imperfect, but it's a metric that they're using to apply or for the eligibility requirements for this grant. And this is the one area where your energy burden is actually low. And they're looking for the real target area for this grant is for the high energy burden communities. But they are recommending that everybody at least apply through step 2 of this program because you're pretty much guaranteed the mini grant and the chance for the energy audit with the costs are covered. There's also a loan program. If you don't win the actual grant, there's actual low interest loan program that can help pay for these projects as well. So Tracy Hall, there's been a lot of work. I'm new with T-Rourke. I've been with them about 2 months now. So actually the timing, I'm very happy to be talking to you tonight because I've been spending the first part of my job getting a lot of background information. And this is a lot of this work was done in the past. You've had some audits done. And as we finish up here, the real key for me is, what can I do and what can I do to help you that will benefit the town the most as far as saving energy funds, making your buildings more reliable, and hopefully getting some grant money in as well. So existing condition of Tracy Hall, you can read through this. I think most people you're probably more familiar than this with I am. I've been there one time. You've probably been there many more times. Insulation is lacking. There's very poor ventilation in some areas. You mentioned before there's 2 oil burners near the end of their life. Excuse me, there's a few things that are in very good condition, including the structure. The structure is really in very good shape. The brick shell and the roof as well. Excuse me. Control electrical system is in good condition, but it's probably near capacity. And the control system is very outdated at this point. So this probably gets into what your questions were from the last meeting, is there are 2 existing proposals, and they're from 2 different companies. One is called Living Buildings, and the other one is Energy Efficiency Investments. We refer to them as EEI. And we've worked with both of these companies in the past at 2 Rivers, and they basically will do energy audits. In fact, a lot of the information that will be brought forth when you have the MERP audit is probably already known from these two companies do a pretty thorough job. The excuse me. The projects were again defined. You voted on it, so if you have specific questions, feel free to ask. But again, I think the energy conservation methods that were brought out were basically to fix the two boilers. These two companies have a pretty similar solution, and that was geothermal, which is a pretty expensive upfront cost, but very low maintenance and very low operating costs once they are installed. They are expensive. I think the original approval was for around $600,000. And these two living buildings, the only real difference is they really designed the building to use just a small amount of energy as possible. They work with thermal mass and geothermal heating and cooling. The only thing that we have from them now is they have a short-term solution, which is to replace one of the existing two boilers with a high-efficiency fossil fuel boiler and leave the other boiler there for parts, also update the controls, and then figure out what your long-term solution is. And the long-term solution for both would include insulation, air sealing, ventilation upgrades. The living buildings does have thermal mass, and it also has the key feature is the geothermal heating and cooling. And these are basically larger systems similar to a heat pump that does heating and cooling with the same unit. So you would have the heating and the air conditioning. And again, EEI does not have the thermal mass, but it does have similar. There's certain differences, but again, I will go through the details more, answer specific questions as we go through. Any other questions there? Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
What specifically is meant by thermal mass?
Thermal mass is a large. Usually, it's a large wall. They'll actually use the walls to hold heat during the day or during times when energy costs are low. They will heat a wall. I guess you could compare it to a large wall in the sun or a large rock. That's really what it is. It's the same type of material that just gathers and holds the heat during the day. And even as the sun goes down, you can feel that heat is still there. And that's I'm sorry?
Is it like a passive solar, or is it more like a Russian stove?
Yeah, it can't exactly. Yes, it can be passive because if it's put in place where the sun shines directly on it, it will heat up naturally. And that's generally what they'll try to do when they place a thermal mass. There's also ways you can heat it mechanically to hold it. And typically they would do that at times when energy costs are lower. If you're on a plan, often the energy costs at night when demand is low, costs are low, and you can charge up the wall with heat during those periods, and then expel that heat when the costs are high. But you don't need all you need then is a fan, not really a cooling or heating system.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Considering these, innovative and necessary energy upgrades, we also have to consider that we have a historic building. So, for instance, adding thermal mass to a building that has an envelope that may be restricted as to what you can do to the outside. The thermal mass have to come into the inside and take a space where people would be working, that kind of thing. Just are the historic parts of the building being considered by these two entities as well as the energy efficiency?
Absolutely. Yeah, your question sounded exactly like my first question. When I saw the building of Tracy Hall, it is a historic building, and they are aware of that. And the thermal mass that he was talking would initially go down in the basement. And it would take it, and it would be a project. I mean, it's an innovative project. It's a great, elegant solution. I love the solution. I wish we had a price to see, what that would cost compared to the benefits of that. But you'd probably lose about a foot of wall space all around the bottom of the first floor or the basement ground floor area that's actually below the ground grade a little bit. And then he could, and his second phase was to actually stack thermal wall structure into the gym area, which would be based over, and the weight would be supported by the thermal mass or the thermal wall that's down in the basement area. So there's large potential for that. And
So
yep.
So can we define the thermal mass as like an interior wall with insulation? Is that like basically what we're talking about in terms of like a layman's term?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's talk more like that. That would be helpful.
So Jeff, this is
Yep.
Marcia Calloway. I feel a bit like a patient who's being talked about by doctors and not consulted. Living Buildings had promised us a proposal, but you're talking like you've seen this proposal and it exists. At no time was I expecting any proposal from EEI, but that seems to exist.
So
And just a second, and the problem that I see beyond all of that is that we have space issues in this building. And I'm just concerned that until this board makes some decisions about what we want to do with our building, any of this work that may be costing us money might be a little bit outdated because it might not actually work with how we want the building to function. So I feel like there's a bit of cart before the horse and lack of information for the body that's making decisions. Yes,
I'd
Rob?
like to clarify. So the Living Buildings, and Jeff can confirm it to answer your questions. The two existing proposals from Living Buildings is what we had seen when it came before us to make the vote as to whether or not we were replacing the boilers, which failed. So that summary, that 3 bullet points, is speaking to the content of what was in that proposal.
So hold on, Roger, question. You're talking about years ago when that went to vote?
No, I'm talking about when we voted, like right before the election in February. Okay, I'm talking about Living Buildings.
Yeah, it was last August when they were talking about getting the boilers and.
So maybe it was even longer than ago because time is a sieve,
Because-
but that proposal, that 3 bullet points is what we had seen when we decided not to replace the boiler. We rejected effectively that proposal. The next one, EEI, is the vote that we had back in 2020. So those are the 2 existing proposals. That being said, there may or may not be a part 2 from Living Buildings that we have not had the benefit of seeing.
And that's the one that
But-
they promised us in December.
Yes, but I would say that, and Jeff can correct us, that the 2 existing proposals do exist, and he's talking about what we have seen in some form, but clearly we don't have so much discerning knowledge that we can remember it with great fidelity, right? But I will also say, but also to your point about thermal mass, it was just simply presented to us as insulation in the form of an interior wall that would be built. So it's just being talked about in a different way, which would make sense because we're being talked to by an expert, an energy expert. And so that's why I just very cheekily, and I apologize, requested more layman's terms. It's effectively going to be an interior wall with insulation that will be built, which will change the space because it'll take up some space.
Okay,
That can
let's
be more
just-
easily done here in the basement, obviously, than upstairs in a gym auditorium. All right,
If we're
so
still gonna
there
have
we
a
go.
gym.
Mhm.
So let's just carry on with your presentation, Jeff.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, and all of this information was existing. There's nothing new here. This is all what I was doing with the background search, what I found, and I have talked to them. We're working with both of these companies on other projects. And obviously, I wanted to try to have as much information as I can pass on to you. And yes, I certainly understand that. And I'm sorry for any miscommunication as far as I certainly don't want to get any information or do anything behind your back with these companies. I'm just trying to get the information myself because as we go to the next slide, sorry, I'm going to jump ahead and go to this slide. I don't want to take too much more time. And you mentioned this, priority 1 right now, my recommendation for the town is that we do need to get a project definition and decide what is the best solution what would you agree, your voters, your select board, any people you want involved, but in order to get these grants, at some point, we're going to have to decide what the best method is for this solution. And to get that, we're going to need pricing from Living Buildings, which we don't have. And I know he's buried. I mean, I don't want to give much, I guess I want to stick up for him, but also, all these contractors are very busy with work right now. And he's very interested in this project, but bottom line, we don't have pricing yet. And there's not a whole lot we can do except, again, a lot of the information we do have, I think we can get a group of people together that I'll be glad to work with in your town to try to get this, project defined. I'm talking high level at this point, like what is, and when I say high level, I mean, is it acceptable to the town to put in and replace one fossil fuel boiler with another at this point? Your Article 36 team is pretty clear that is not the way they want to go. They would prefer to replace fossil fuels. That's really the intention of the MERP grant as well. It's to eliminate as many fossil fuel, as much dependence on fossil fuel as we can. And I'm sure we could have a great debate about this tonight and take up the rest of your meeting, but probably not. So this is really just an overview on where we need to go from here. And again, that for everything we've looked at and all the projects that we've done, there's a lot going on with electric vehicles. There's solar issues, possible solar fields going ahead. But really the grants are coming down the pike here. There's a few options for Tracy Hall. That's, again, correct me if I'm wrong as well, because I've been doing a lot of reading, but from what I've seen, Tracy Hall is at the top of the priority list for energy efficiency. It's been described as the #1 point of most fossil fuel use in Norwich. So that's what I kind of focused on as well.
Roger.
I want to go back to the point that Marcia was probably making before we had our clarification. So I guess for me, just sort of quickly, I'm not interested in sort of the heating and cooling question because I trust that we'll have a process that will figure that out, whether it's a air source or ground source heat pumps, or whether or not it has some kind of backup fossil fuel. I think there's probably a process that this board can come to make these decisions. I guess I'm more curious in terms of like ventilation and a mechanical plan. What Marcia sort of alluded to was this desire to make sure that we're maximizing our spaces to 21st century standards for work. Right? We want to have comfortable, like smart arrangements. We have sort of big open spaces in some parts of our building and very tiny crammed offices in others. Right. So we want to make sure that our employees are better served in that way. But at the same time, where you put ventilation, where you put mechanical stuff, right, is part of finishing work. And so, I think there's like an architectural question that is really here. I don't think for the interest of time that this board, because of the funding mechanisms that we have and time, I don't think this board wants to do, a huge collaborative community project about what is the future of, our building, right? How do you want to think about this as a public space? But I do think that we would like to know how. I guess my question to you, because this is not a discussion item in our agenda, is how do you see that sort of like architectural consultation happening as part of a ventilation package?
Yeah, no, that's a, go ahead.
Wants to add on.
And just to clarify, I think I'm not convinced that we wouldn't want to include the town because this is our only town meeting space. So that's out for discussion.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a very good point that you brought up about ventilation, because that is the key part of this project. I think that might even be the most expensive part of the project. I think I did see a slide that did show to really get proper ventilation and to make all your employees comfortable and safe, which is what you want. There was also some mold issues that would be a major part of the project. So I think what I could recommend, and this is wide open, but my recommendation at this point would probably be that let's get these proposals updated, including costing, and we could present that to whoever you decide would like to see this information. And if you would like me to step aside and you have somebody there that you would like to work directly with the contractors, that's fine as well. I'm here for you. I'm your regional energy coordinator, and here to benefit your town as best we can. So I have no set agenda as to how that's done, but I'll be glad. We do work with these vendors, and the other thing I want to stress is I'm an independent energy consultant. I'm not making money from any of these projects, so look at me as your eyes to be able to help you really evaluate these projects with an open mind. And really what I'm looking at is when they tell us that it's going to cost this much, we want the project to cost that much. But when they also say it's going to save you this much energy, you're going to spend money to save energy, we want to verify that you actually do save that energy as the project is implemented. So that's going to be key as well. So a number of ways to get ahead. And again, I think it's an issue that could probably take more time or a separate meeting to discuss in a lot more detail. But EEI, as you mentioned, they did do this a while ago. I don't know I should know this off the top of my head. I don't remember exactly when they did their audit and proposal. But I did speak to him, and he said he could get that updated within probably a month or so. To get the go ahead. And Living Buildings, I think he gave his last proposal in either November or December of last year, so it wasn't that long ago.
Just speaking for myself, Jeff, I think what I'd like to see is that we're included in everything, this board, because the buck sort of stops here.
Absolutely.
And we need to also be thinking about the people in town and making sure that they're comfortable, because we went down this road before and then there was a special meeting and it was voted down. We don't need to go there again. I think we need probably to have this board think very carefully about the space issues and then start folding in the rest of it, because I can't imagine that that's not going to have some driving factor. But I think, again, speaking for myself, we need every good mind put on this. So the Energy Committee, the Task 36, which doesn't really exist anymore, but I've been saying I thought we needed to have another committee involved. But I think we need you, and mostly we just need to be sharing information so that nobody is making decisions about this town unless we've all come to a collaborative agreement that that's the way we want to go. How does everybody else? Roger, you want to say something?
Yeah, so I think it's worth getting updated information. There's probably been some technology changes for the control system, for example. So, and then obviously all costs really in the new world order have changed. So I do think getting all of that basic information updated would be something that we should think about, or that Brennan should work with Jeff on. So I think we're going to do that. I guess my other point is, I don't know what the process would be. I don't know what kind of process this board would actually undergo for evaluating the space question.
I think we need to schedule a meeting on Tracy Hall and just have a good talk, the board.
So yes, so I would say that we should be careful that wouldn't become an unwieldy set of conversations. We should think about what kind of process we would want to have with that, because it's and about office space. And office configuration. And then my last point related to that is I was under the impression that I think I was told from Herb that the floor in Tracy Hall had been sanded down to the point where it's not to be sanded down anymore, that it was to be replaced. So I'm not going to authorize a multi-million-dollar ventilation system and then like also have to think about like $100,000 floor. Or else you could see how if we didn't have a clear narrative about these issues, it would be potentially embarrassing for our sets of decision making. So we should make sure that we have
full information.
the full information on the space. So yes, so I'm fine to continue to talk about the process relating to space, but I would be concerned about an unwieldy conversation, and I would want to make sure that we are consulting someone who can guide the conversation effectively.
We'll keep it narrow. Mary?
I agree with Roger about getting the price estimates. I think what is missing from this is probably an architectural perspective. I know my daughter-in-law is trained as an interior architect, and I think that might be the type of person that you would want, because it would be a person that would understand what the requirements of the people have to work in the environment, but would also understand how the systems have to be put together to get that result. And I think that's what's missing from this. And we've got very hardworking energy committee, we've got IREC, we've got some really good pieces, but we don't have the piece which is, it is a historic building. There are people working here. The public does use this building. There are a lot of elements that are not present in the energy analysis. So I think we need that kind of expert help to help us. I don't know if that's available, but I think if we could find that person, I think that would be helpful. Yeah,
Good point. Pam.
What I would like to see is us putting together an RFP of all of the things that we think this building needs, a comprehensive plan to do one thing or do two things when we leave other things undone. And it's been 25 or more years since this building was reconfigured.
1990s.
Now, 1995, I think it was done. So we're at 28 years now. And we use the building differently than we did 28 years ago. So I think we need someone to come in, and there are engineering firms out there who can do mechanical and structural studies. And I would like to see several proposals, not just one. You know, the same with EEI, they wrote the RFQ, they were the only bidder on the RFQ. I don't want to see that again.
Well, let's schedule a meeting for just this topic, and we can go from there in just a second. Priscilla.
We have a number of architects in town who live in town and practice, and maybe we could ask them. I mean, I don't think we wait for them to volunteer, maybe just ask them, would some of you like to get together and form a committee to think about this and perhaps even recommend the right kind of architect to do this? Because I'm married to an architect, full disclosure, and he would not be involved in this. Fundamentally not suited for this. But it seems to me that the architect usually pulls together all these pieces designing buildings. So I think we should get some of these architects we have in town together and say, okay, you guys, help us figure out a plan of going forward.
Okay. Roger, can
just currently, EEI does consult and work with an architect. And so I believe when we originally did this proposal and that question of, how much do you want to look at the spaces? It was said, we don't. And so I think if we were to have said, yes, we do want to look at these spaces, they would have worked with the architect that they consult with in a different way. So, we got a good product from EEI, so it's worth our energy, our IREC person, bringing that new nuance back to them as part of updating the package, is what I might say.
Okay. To close out from you, Linda, right?
Yes, thank you very much. Linda Gray, Kerwin Hill Road. And so I just want to try to highlight some to-do things that I'd like to suggest to you. So one, going back to the initial stuff that Jeff mentioned through the MERP program. So there's $4,000 to be gotten by spending 5 minutes on an app. $4,000 to be gotten in the mini grant through MERP that is very easy to get. It takes about 5 minutes. Jeff could help. We need a town person to authorize that, so Jeff could work with Brennan on that. That's then the other thing is to sign up to get the state energy audit. That's free. We might as well do that. I want to piggyback on the suggestion that's bubbling up from you all to have a separate meeting focused just on Tracy Hall, because Marcus Jones from Living Buildings, Jeff has given you, by mentioning, say, thermal mass and stuff like that, he's given you a sneak preview of what Marcus has, a broader proposal for the building, but he needs more than 10 or a half hour, for a presentation and question and answer. So if you could end up identifying a time in April or May, he would come and give you the proposal. And then, like, the last thing, to piggyback again on a suggestion, like, I think once you have that in hand, the thing to do with it, as several of you at different times have mentioned, is you kind of need some kind of committee to, like, start delving into the details and sorting out which avenue to pursue and which one not, and stuff like that. So I would suggest that after you have a focused meeting on Tracy Hall, that then you kind of figure out, like, maybe you have a Tracy Hall task force that's following up on, like the Article 36, following up on how do we implement.
So just a quick question. I'm always nervous about applying for grants because you've got to use them for an appropriate purpose.
Yeah, the mini grant. Well, Jeff, can you comment? Because the mini grant, as he said, it's sort of like the state is putting it out there and saying to towns, hey, if you want to stop and pick up this free money, please do. And they're very broad, as I understand it. Jeff's been the one attending different presentations about what you can use that for. Jeff, let me stop and let you fill in on what it can be used for.
Yeah, as far as the grants that I've seen, this is absolutely the easiest grant application that I've ever seen. I had a town I worked with this week that I had an hour meeting to go. It's an online application. You can fill it out. I scheduled an hour. We were literally done filling out the application in 5 minutes. It's got very simple, it's very easy application, and it's got very few restrictions on what you can use that for. It does have to be energy related. I'll throw a shameless plug out there and say you can use, since I'm an energy consultant for the town, you can even use the funds to pay TRORC for my services. You can use it for education. You can use it as a funding for your energy committee. And we are contracted. TRORC does have a contract with the agency that is implementing this grant. And part of that funding is we can apply for the grant for you. We can manage the grant for you. This is probably the easiest grant that you'll see. And I'm not a salesman. I'm an engineer. So I'm not trying to sell you on it. I agree with Linda that, yeah, this is something we should really benefit. It's not a huge grant. The other benefit of applying is it gets you in the system. It'll get your town in the system and get you set up. It's not required for the audit or for the grant itself, but it does get you in the same system, set up in the system that you will be using when you do apply for the energy audit. It is the only part of the program that's open now. The audit, they're telling us, the application for the energy audits will be released probably by the end of May, maybe a little bit sooner. But the only thing that's open now is this mini grant. And go ahead.
Just to clarify, I think Marsha's saying, how would we fill out that grant? We would fill out that grant as the town of Norwich would like a mini grant for broad energy purposes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, yep, the grant, it's all online. I can shoot you the link. It's you actually, what you'll need is you'll need a primary contact and a financial contact and a project contact. They can be the same person. So you could say your town administrator, if you have a grant application process, if you have a grant administrator, they could be the same person, or you could have somebody from the select where you can spread it apart if you want to. Then there's a checklist as far as what you want to use the grant for. There's energy consultant, there's energy training, there's outreach to your community, and it's pretty broad. And that's the only thing I'd recommend is that you check one of those boxes. And I'll be glad to get online or even stop in and go through that grant with whoever you designate to apply for that grant. I'll be glad to work with you on that.
And
again.
I would just add, I think my understanding from conversations with Jeff is you don't exactly have to decide and have even a paragraph to say, we plan to use this for X, Y, Z. It's just the general thing. And then you get the money and then you report afterwards within a year how you spent it. So it's easy.
Right, you don't even need to, you don't even need to say, you just check a box for your use, and that's all you need to say as far as there's no description, there's no purpose. It's just check one of their boxes and we'll send you the check. Like Linda said, it was described to us as they're throwing this money on the ground, you just need to bend over and pick it up. So
easy makes me nervous. Pam?
I know, it does. It's like no free lunch, right? But I think it is a sign of things to come. There is a lot of grant opportunities coming up. So that's the other thing is if you don't have, if you don't have a defined process or procedure on how you handle grants and how you manage grants, it might be another good thing to talk about, or have a town designee that would administer and manage grants. And for this particular grant, we can certainly help with the project management. And with other grants, we can assist with that as well. But this one is pretty much included in the price is if you either get this grant or if you don't get the actual grant, the loan is up through the same program. So there's funds available. And I do want to just throw in the last thing, your energy burden. We have no idea how much of a factor that's going to be, but you are on the wrong end of the energy burden. And it's not a perfect metric. But if for some reason you don't get the grant, that would probably be the reason why. But we still think it's worth it to apply. You will get the mini grant. I can pretty much assure you of that. And it's very, very likely that you'll get a free energy audit as well. So you don't need to pay anybody else to come in and do an audit of the building. That's supplied by the state. And that audit is a requirement to get the larger grant. But even if you don't get the grant, you'll have a well-defined project by the time they're done is of that exactly what to do, because we'll have their input as well. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Pam, do you want to finish this up?
There's a webinar next Tuesday, the 18th. VLCT is putting on a webinar on this program from 10 to 11.
Okay.
I've signed up for that.
Good, thank you. Okay, I think we have exhausted this one.
Yes. Very sorry I took so much time, but just let me know how I can help you. That's why I'm here. So I do appreciate all your time and all you do for the town. So thank you.
So what is the next step?
The next step I was going to suggest was that we don't have this as an action item, but we could consider voting to fill out the MERP application for the grant, because I kind of like the idea of using the $4,000 towards the payment that we make to TRORC for his salary, and we would get a state energy audit.
So you're suggesting we have a motion?
I'm just throwing it out as an idea.
Is it something we need to do now, or can it wait till the 26th? I mean, is there a need to act quickly, I guess is my question.
Jeff, if you're still there, is there a need to act earlier than the 26th?
No, there's no real rush, but there is a certain number of funds, but we're working pretty closely with the agency that's administering this, and they're actually a little bit fewer applicants than they expected. So that actually bodes well for the actual grant itself. The fewer the people that apply, the better your chances are. But also, just to be clear, they are totally separate. That applying for the mini grant does not automatically mean you will get the audit. It just means you'll be in the system already. So when you apply for the audit, you'll be in the system and they'll be somewhat familiar with your town. And because you've got the mini grant, I would think that would also help that, hey, they've received this grant, so then let's go on to the next step. We've been told that if you do, with as much certainty as you can say, if you do apply for the audit itself, which is step 2, that you will get that as well.
So,
And that's on one building for now, not a number of buildings. So you will have to, I think for your town, it will be easy to decide, and the decision is made already, but it is for one building. Just to be clear on that, they are separate, but and the application for the audit won't be even open until probably the end of May. But the mini grant is the one thing that is open now. No real rush, but again, the application process is simple enough. So, and there's very few strings attached. And yeah, but I mean, if you need time to get familiar with it and see, then that's certainly understandable as well with the training. And I'll shoot you a link for the application, and you can actually scroll through that and see. It's about even 2 pages long, I think. So, and it's all online.
If you send that to Brennan, that would be great.
Yep, will do. Okay.
If you were willing to take a motion, I'm happy to make one, because I think, given the broad nature of this grant, and given that we have, it's consistent with budgeted items, at least in part, I think it would be appropriate to take action if you're open for a motion.
I am open for a motion.
Okay, remind me of the name of the actual grant is, other than MERP.
Municipal Energy Resilience Program.
Okay.
You got it.
So I move to ask the town manager to work with our regional energy coordinator on an application to the Municipal Energy Resilience Program. Jeez,
do we have a second?
Could you say that again? Just to work with? I'm sorry.
So
I understand.
so my motion was essentially to direct our town manager to work with Jeff Grout on an application.
On an application, okay,
Yeah.
specifically, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll second it.
Thanks.
Any discussion? I'm just gonna ask Brennan.
Well, I just, if this is a 5-minute process, we won't work long. And I think we're checking the box that we would use this for energy consulting and just something. So we're gonna potentially submit an application here before we meet again.
Yeah,
The intent.
that would be the intent, yeah.
And I'm thinking we would use that against the budgeted money for TROs.
That makes sense.
May I call the question? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jeff. Please don't be a stranger. We want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And sorry I took too much tonight, but thank you.
We were catching up, so we'll see you again.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. All right. Sorry that took so long, but I think it was productive. Number 9 on the information session is the interim town manager contract. I just wanted to point out that the contract that we have with Brennan Duffy will be expiring on June 30th, 2023, which will come all too quickly. The board will need to address this at the April 26th meeting, and we may need to have an executive session. Brennan, do you have anything to add?
I will just say that Marcia and I have had an informal conversation about me continuing on after June 30th and the return capacity, and I guess we'll talk a little bit more before the 26th about what that could look like.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, now we are into reports, and the only report we had submitted was from the police department. And I think, as I said earlier, there's going to be some other issues that we may have on our agenda for the next meeting, April 26th, multiple issues. Anything to add, Brennan?
I know Wade is Wade is on the meeting here, if you want to say anything, you have the.
Chief Cochran, did you want to add anything today to your report, or will we just hear from you on the next meeting on the 26th?
Hey, Madam Chair, I think I would be better prepared on the 26th to present, if that's okay.
That's absolutely okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, Cheryl Lindbergh.
Cheryl, thank you, Martha. Quickly, just an update, since we kind of follow the department of the town, the Board of Listers today met with KRT appraisal firm, and we do have the public forum that I posted on the listserv May 2nd, the evening of May 2nd, when they will present a PowerPoint discussing the process that will take place. And it's scheduled for this room here with a hybrid setup, meaning we'll have a Zoom option as well. And just wanted you to know that we had a great conversation today with them, and we're getting the plan rolling.
Great. And so by process, you mean the process of reappraisal for the town?
Correct.
Good. We look forward to that. All right, the next item on the agenda, I believe, I had asked if we could include liaison to the Norwich Selectboard, or
Norwich
school board.
Yeah.
Thank you, I was up early. So, is there anyone who is interested in being the liaison? Would you like to volunteer? Thank you, Pam. Shall we, does anyone else want to volunteer? Otherwise, we can put it to the vote. Do we have a motion to appoint Pam Smith to be liaison to the school board?
So moved.
So moved by Mary Layton. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Priscilla. All in favor? Priscilla, all right, we'll call.
Yes.
Priscilla, yes. Pam? Abstain. Roger?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Marcia, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, the next thing is probably I can't even think of it, local energy emergency management plan. Brennan.
Okay, actually, I'm probably going to finish over quickly. If you Chief Northern, who prepared this document, which is in the packet, I believe this is an annual process. We reaffirm the town of Norwich emergency plan, and I see Alex is on but muted. Alex, I can make you a co-host if you wanted to share anything, or you can just kind of verbalize anything that you'd like us to know.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. There's nothing much for me to add. It is a yearly process. This is a process that's driven by the state, and every town in the state it's incumbent upon them to produce an LAMP every year with all the appropriate updates. The only cautionary note that I will bring up is that the individual who signs for the town has to have ICS 100, and I'm not sure if that is I just don't know if that's the case right now.
Yeah, I can answer that. We were actually thinking that potentially if you have that certification, you can sign on behalf of the town. And the select board chair has to sign, but it doesn't have that requirement for the training.
Does that mean I can sign or?
There's 2 signatures required. You're not required to have any special training.
Okay.
Whoever signs for the town doesn't need to have any special training, but it doesn't specify that it has to be the interim town manager or anyone else that I see.
Okay.
So, Chief, you have that training?
I'm sorry?
Do you have that training?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, the person who signs the top line, which is generally the town manager or the person filling that position, has to have ICS 100. That's the only stipulation. The person who signed for the select board slot, the second line down on the adoption form, does not.
So I would propose that potentially, if I did not hold that certification, you would be the town signature for this year.
So does that mean that the form has to be redone or not?
No, there's no.
Okay.
Is Alex willing to do this?
Alex, are you willing to do this?
To sign that line?
Are you willing to sign? Chief Northern, are you willing to sign? You're still on mute.
Chief Northern, you're muted.
Sorry about that. My radio was on in the background, my fire department radio. I didn't hear. I'm sorry. What was the question?
Are you willing to sign this document?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as the deputy emergency management director, certainly. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question because last night at 3 a.m. I was called because there was smoke in Tracy Hall. And so none of these numbers are effective unless it's an emergency that happens during the workday. Right? And 3 a.m, none of those work. So I've talked to Brennan today about how we're gonna have a telephone tree and other plans for things like what happened last night, but does that change what we should be putting on this emergency plan?
Well, I'm not sure which numbers do you feel don't work?
Well, these are all town numbers, aren't they?
Are you talking page 15, municipal contract?
I'm talking page 64 of this. It's the local
Oh.
emergency plan of the.
Oh, I'm talking about the plan itself. I'm on page, I had the same question, page 15 of the plan.
Okay,
And it gives all select board members, it's Tracy Hall.
well, this is the,
Yeah, it's the Tracy Hall number,
And also all our emails is just,
select board at Norwich.
Well, that's the way it's been every year. And if you'd like that to change, that's fine. I just essentially roll it over with new numbers or new people, as the case may be. Those numbers for the select board have remained constant. So if you'd like me to change it, I certainly will.
well, I guess my question is, at 3 a.m, when there's smoke in Tracy Hall and somebody calls a select board member, does that qualify as a local emergency?
No. The local emergency management plan has to do with natural disasters, right? So in other words, if a shelter needs to be stood up, if somebody needs to call DBW to find out if they have certain equipment that is needed, that is the purpose of the LEMP. It also is there to ensure that Norwich is, within the realm of applying for disaster relief. All those kind of things emanate from the LMP. This has nothing to do with a call at 3 a.m. about a boiler.
Okay, so in terms of like the fire chief number here, is that number something that you answer 24/7?
Which number are you talking about?
649-1133.
No, that's my office number. My cell phone
Okay.
number is included. You may be looking at the redacted version. I submit both, right? I submit one where all of the personal addresses and phone numbers have been redacted because we don't want those numbers floating in the ether. The one that you'll sign has all of the appropriate cell phone numbers for the police chief, fire chief, etc. on it. We just don't want that to be made public.
Okay,
Well, from the packet.
so that's what I was concerned about because I just imagine, a natural disaster could happen in the middle of the night and how do we proceed? But I'm okay with this at the moment.
So just since we're talking about numbers, so just as like an aside, Brennan, I see like, for example, the town health officers, their email address is clerk. Like I'm fine if the world doesn't email me. But I think a town health officer, so I guess we should get them email addresses, town email addresses. I think just a ticket with our technology vendor. So can we just submit a ticket for our town health officers to have on their town emails?
Yeah,
I don't have to answer that, but
I think this can be a sign.
seeing this spelled out, that would be, that's just an aside,
Okay.
because right now it's clerk at. And so, and it's probably a holdover from when Bonnie was the
Yeah,
health
that would make
officer.
sense.
It doesn't have to be updated now, but just as like a future thing.
Okay, Cheryl, you have,
Quick question on the form. Page 15 of the form, do we want to list an interim finance director in that list? Has that been done? The finance director been in the past? Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look where you're looking at. On 15, it says, yeah, interim town finance director. And I'm not sure what your question is.
I was just saying, have we always listed a finance director in the
Yes.
list?
Yes,
Okay,
Okay,
all the others seem to be elected, that's fine.
all right. I think we need a motion for this to approve it. Is there a motion to adopt the local energy management plan? Emergency, the energy on the line.
I'm really Joyce on here wouldn't know she's leaving and we have someone else that's coming when.
I don't know if we have a new name yet. Do we have a name?
We have another contracted employee, obviously, when Chief Northern filled this out, we did not know that it was gonna be gone here at the end of the month, so I mean, I don't know that the interim finance director is a critical piece of the emergency plan. We can just remove that name, we so choose.
well, that position does become critical if the town is unfortunate enough to have a large event, which costs a lot of money. And so the finance director would obviously be integral in any kind of planning with FEMA, with state Vermont emergency management, anything of that sort. So, the name could be removed. I'm not sure if that's wise.
Well, I think that on the day that we sign it, the person who is in the chair is the person who's on the form.
Do we not have two people in the office right now?
So I would suggest just changing the email to finance@norwich.vermont.us, which will be an email address that gets redirected to whoever is currently in the seat and currently gets redirected to Joyce, and whoever is in the future get a message that says Dear Joyce. So I might suggest that as the technical way out of this.
Roger, can you give me that email address again?
It's just finance@norwich.vermont.us.
And that's what you would like to see in the finance director position.
I am proposing that as a solution, yeah.
So we keep the name, change the address.
Okay.
Which is all true today. And will be true tomorrow when we sign it. Unless you have it right now. I'm signing it today.
So Marcia, in terms of the technicality, so you're signing, when would you like me to sign?
Well, if we're gonna change any of this, I can pop over tomorrow and we can sign it.
Okay, so tomorrow's not a good day. Friday would be.
What did you say, Barry?
I said there's no date on the signature line that I see here, so you can, I think you can sign it and then have the chief to sign it.
All right, so I'm gonna sign it now because if it's approved, because there's no date required, and then you can sign it when it's convenient.
Okay, great, that works. Thank you.
You need a motion?
We do need a motion.
Okay, I move to adopt the local emergency management plan as presented and to authorize the appropriate signatures as required.
Thank you. Second. Second by Priscilla. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Item 12, we have two grants for the DPW, one for paving and one for a structural package for Route 132. Do we have Chris Kaufman here?
You?
I am
Chris
here.
Kaufman?
I am here. Hello. Bonjour. Can you hear me?
Sure. One week on the line.
Yeah, we can do this. So what we've included in the packet are two grant applications. These have not yet been submitted, and you don't need any signatures at this time. We're just looking for the board to affirm that the town will apply for these two grants, and I'll let Chris speak just quickly about both of the projects.
So essentially, okay, so essentially this is for FY24 municipal highway grants. The highway grants they're each April, there are two municipal highway grants that come from VTrans. One's a class 2 roadway grant and one's a structural grant. In general, these grants are awarded based on a need and a ranking criteria established by the VTrans. and are typically awarded to towns every 2 to 3 years, depending on funding availability and ranking requirements. The maximum award for each of these grants is $200,000, and once awarded, the municipality has 30 months to complete the project. And roadway grants are an 80% award and a 20% local match, and can only be used for Class 2 roadways. And the structural grant is a 90% award with a 10% match. So the first particular grant we're proposing to apply for is the roadway grant for the extension of Beaver Meadow Road. So we did the first part of Beaver Meadow Road in 2001 and 22. That was 1.7 miles. That was an overlay and a shim and some shoulder work. We're proposing to do the next 2 miles of the roadway, since that's, as pointed out in the road service inventory report by TRORC, and as seen out on the road itself, that it's deteriorating and has, significant needs with regards to cracking and potholes and depressions. So we're proposing, as recommended in there, to do reclamation and repaving work. And also the shouldering. That we had an estimate for approximately $249,000, and the dollar match for the town would be $49,800, and the remaining $199,200, and again, this is approximate, would be paid for by the state grant. And the monies for the town would be paid by the designated paving fund, which is estimated to be around $280,000 at the end of FY23. So that's the Class 2. And of course, there's no guarantee we're going to get it. And based on our ranking that I saw with the district, there's a chance we probably may not get it. It sort of depends on who's applying for these grants. So we'll see, but we'll definitely get it next year if we don't get it this year. But again, we have 30 months to do the project, so that's a significant chunk of time. The second grant application is a structures grant, and this is for an undersized culvert on 132. It's culvert number 18. It's near the location of 511 Route 132. And this is a corrugated metal culvert that's inserted into a concrete, a deteriorating concrete structure, circa 1960s, maybe early 60s. That has a significant, drop off, almost 15 feet vertical, doesn't have any guardrail. There's significant problems there, and it's a safety hazard as well. Stantec did a hydraulic analysis and a rough design, and estimated a 4-foot by 5.5-foot box culvert with a wing wall that would help support the road, which would replace this structure and help reinforce the integrity of the road. The estimate Stantec provided was $180,000. So the dollar match for the town would be $18,000, and the remaining $162,000 would be paid for by a state grant. And this money would be paid through the bridge fund, which should be around $640,000 at the end of FY23. So I think we should apply for these grants. I think they're important. I think these two projects, are in significant need. I do believe we have a good opportunity to get the structures grant for sure this year. So again, I would recommend that we proceed on applying for the grants.
Mary?
Just a small question on the Route 132 work. Is it true that it would be about a week's worth of work? And as the flagger was for 40 hours, because there will be a detour involved, I think, right?
Yes, there would absolutely be a detour. I don't know yet in terms of how long it would take. It sort of depends. We do have to excavate that old structure out and do some fill and so there may be periods where it could be, I would say at least a week to 2 weeks, depending on the contractor and who we choose and how we approach the work. So
it might be that there's active work and then there might have to be a pause. And then, you bring somebody new in. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So just for the benefit of the public, Chris, this isn't the other infamous Route 132 grant that we've recently completed. Is that right? This is a different culvert over there. Is that?
Yeah, this is different. Yeah.
Okay, so
It's not infamous.
it was infamous because it was it was talked about a lot, the
It's
previous
beautifully
one.
done.
Yeah,
It's done.
it was infamous,
It
because
should
it
be
was beautifully
famous.
done, yeah, okay, famous. It was famous.
There you go.
So how many other sort of culverts are around 132, if you could just like really quickly, like-
That's probably one of the worst ones. We do have a number of culverts along 132, especially that are undersized, and Route 132. I mean, this is for a larger discussion. 132 has been ignored for many years, and it needs significant work. It's one of the high needs that need to be addressed for paving, and I'm trying to balance out these grants, as we only get them every 2 to 3 years. It's trying to choose what we approach next. 132 is broken up into 3 phases, where the portion over by Route 5 and then the other side towards Thetford would just be a shim and an overlay, but the center portion of that roadway would need to be completely reclaimed and redone because it's in significant need of rebuilding. So we have some definite structures that we're going to be working on over at least the next 2 to 3 years, replacing those as we go along, similar to what we're doing on Beaver Meadow and New Boston Road. So,
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Pam?
Wouldn't it make sense to get all these structural things done before you did the reclamation of the road and the repaving? So make sure that all of these culverts are replaced that need to be replaced, and then do the road?
That's what we're doing. We're not talking about repaving 132 for a good number of years until we get all the structures replaced. So yeah, that's what we're going to be tackling over probably the next 2 to 3 years.
On the way in tonight on New Boston Road, I noticed some orange lines that seem to align with some culverts. Are those the ones that are being replaced?
Those are the 4 that were replaced. Yeah, we just did some saw cutting today to get ready for that work.
So
Yeah.
how long will the road be closed for that?
I'm still talking to my foreman about how we're approaching that, but we'll be addressing that as soon as John and I have a chance to figure out exactly when we're going to do it. But I would imagine it's going to be closed at different points at different times. We'll tackle one culvert, and then we'll reopen the road, and then we'll tackle the next one. So I would say it might be closed at various times, but we'll definitely inform everybody and put it on the listserv.
Yeah, because right now I'm concerned about alternate routes coming in town because of mud season.
Yep.
So Chris, I have 4 questions. As to the Beaver Meadow Road, if you don't get the grant, that road looks like it's in bad shape. Do you have a plan B?
Well, the plan B is the next section is to reapply next year. Again, we have 30 months. If we get the grants now, we'd have 30 months to do it. If we apply next year, then we'd have another 30 months to get it. So, I mean, I'd like to take advantage of the grant. If we choose to do it ourselves, then we would have to come up with that money ourselves, which right now would be a significant chunk of money. And
Right.
Yeah.
Is the shoulder safe if we can't fix it?
Is the shoulder safe on the
Yeah,
road?
the shoulder broken up.
Yeah, I mean, the road's definitely in need of repairs. I mean, we have a number of roads that, and various other towns as well have shoulder issues, but anything that's of significant concern, we try to address ourselves through coal patching and working on the road internally with our staff. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Then as to the culvert, I noted there was a tiny little language at the bottom of one of the pages that there could be an impact to protected historical or archaeological sites. What do we know about that, or is that just boilerplate coverage language?
That's pretty boilerplate stuff. Yeah.
Okay. And then my other questions are about this drainage area. I can see on one of the pictures a house, and I'm thinking you're going to massively make a change in this culvert, which means that potentially if there was a water event, there'd be a lot more flow. I'm just wondering, do we know what the impact is going to be on these houses or properties, and have the owners been notified of the work?
well, no, the owners haven't been notified of the work because right now we haven't gotten the grant yet, so we don't know if we're going to be able to do that work. But in terms of the flow, we wouldn't necessarily be increasing any flow. All we're doing is increasing the size of the pipe so we can adequately drain the across the roadway. So we wouldn't be increasing flows. We would just be passing through the flows that's necessary. We wouldn't be backing up the flow by putting in a larger culvert that's sized correctly.
I just thought maybe you were turning on the faucet, and
Mother Nature does that.
Mother Nature does that. but
That's
it's-
why they have to be bigger culverts.
Right, I know it's gotta go somewhere, but I'm just worried about, it'll get through the culvert, but it'll be in a nice bigger flow. Is that gonna be a problem?
It's a huge area before we ever get to that house. The house is way down to the.
Okay,
Yeah, it's in a pretty well channelized situation, and it doesn't flow year round. So that's the other thing. So so.
good. All right, any more discussion about this, or are we ready for a motion?
I think ready for motions. I move to approve applying for the municipal highway grant for repaving on Beaver Meadow Road.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roger seconded. Any more discussion? Call a question, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Another.
You guys have over.
Oh, sorry.
And then the culvert, yeah.
Right.
I move to approve applying for the municipal highway grant for culvert work on Route 132.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Second by Roger. Any more discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Unanimous. Thank you again, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you.
I'm sitting here looking at Nancy Osgood and wondering if it would be reasonable to reorder our agenda to move number 16 to.
Very good.
Hello, Nancy.
Well, thank you for reordering. And as I think both you and Brenda know, that we're not asking request for authorization to apply for a grant. We received the grant and we are asking that you authorize Brennan to sign the grant agreement so that we can move ahead with finding a consultant to nominate the houses on Jones Circle as an historic district, the National Register.
Okay. Any questions for Nancy?
No.
Priscilla?
My brain's a little tired. He says, okay, it's been already approved, the grant. It's already in, that's all done.
Yeah.
It's been approved or just like.
We applied for a grant and Marcia very kindly signed our grant application.
Right.
And then we learned in January that we received the grant.
Yeah.
But then it's a contract between the Division for Historic Preservation and the town. So someone from the town has to sign the grant agreement. And then we send out requests for proposals and the commission selects the consultant. And then there's a contract between the town and the consultant. And over the next couple of years, because this project has to be finalized by September 2025, that the consultant will get in touch, has to do reports, will probably submit invoices to the town occasionally for her work, but not, or his work, not to exceed $7,500. And she will, or he will be paid. And then once all the papers are in and you approve them to the division that you have followed all their instructions, then the town will receive $7,500.
Because I'm looking at this. In-kind expenditure.
Well, that's right.
So, I mean.
It's a matching grant.
Right, but I mean, who's paying?
This is going
This is
to,
all, but it's awesome town employees, like the zoning planning administrator.
Right, but they're not being paid, but whatever work they are being counted as, I think, Brandon, I think are on for $900 of the work would normally be the zoning and planning director, but hopefully.
I can maybe explain. So the way these grants work is you have basically billable hours that internal staff can do, which is used in lieu of cash that would match a grant. So instead of saying, we want a $7,500 grant and we're going to put up $7,500 in cash money from the town, we're doing a payment in basically a service, and it gets billed a certain amount, but it's in-kind service, not cash.
So this is sort of added on to say your other duties.
In the official thing now. There's no free money and there's no grants that don't come without some kind of like local match.
So essentially the town is paying these costs because we pay you when we pay the planning system.
You can look at it.
You're taking their time, yes.
There are volunteers here, there are people.
Well, I know they're wrong, I know you should know, no, I just picked out planning zoning. I only do two people, and I don't know if Sarah refers. She's the historical. I don't know, but I don't know if she, you know.
She, like everyone else, is really chipping in, but donating her time. And that,
So, go ahead, Roger.
Well, do you have a thought you wanna finish? with
Well, I
that?
was just wondering, so no money is actually passing hands here? I mean, like,
We're taking money at
right,
the end of the day. We're being reimbursed, so we're gonna be paying out expenditures, and then if the grant closed out, we get reimbursed for the $7,500 worth of work. And then the state gets an accounting for the kind of work that happens along with the match.
so we're just trying to say that during that time before the grant is closed out, the town will have to pay up to $7,500 to the consultant. But all that money is coming back in from the division, so it's a wash in the end.
so for example, I see one person on here who's down for 10 hours, and I think the person lives in one of those houses.
Yes.
Is that a conflict? I mean,
He's not, well, I'm glad that Peter is helping us because he has something very important in his house, which is, I think, a medallion from the National Homes Corporation, sort of certifying, that he is living in a National Homes prefabricated house. And he's done a lot of research, and he certainly is a neighbor of other people in Jones Circle. So I hope that perhaps we need to do, I don't know what the consultant is going to ask us to do as volunteers to help, but we need to work hard in order to match, the $5,600 plus that we need to do. And so maybe he will interview, maybe somebody else will do deep research, maybe Sarah will look at all the files of the Historical Society, send off all the lister cards that we have scanned of the Jones Circle houses. So these are the ways in which we'll try to help the consultant with the project.
okay, so Peter would get $281.
No, he doesn't get any money.
That's basically that's his work.
No,
Okay,
no.
That's the value of.
The value.
Roger?
My only, so you may remember today, I was very sad that I voted no on this because I didn't feel like we had the staffing capacity and not much has materially changed. So my question for this group is, we made, I sort of appreciated the comment that, we're not moving on the kids bridge right now because we don't have the staff and our capacity. So how is this different would be my question.
Well, this is a deadline of September 25 to conclude the project, so we've got 2.5 years.
We also have a grant person in the town manager's office who can handle these things.
Okay.
So, and it seems like we have a lot of volunteers doing the work.
Well, let me say too, that, I did read the job description of the planning and zoning director. And I think it says that he or she, would like the grants and the RFPs. Well, That isn't entirely true because the commission has in the past written at least part of the grants, and we wrote the entire grant this year, which you signed. We have written the entire RFP and it had been approved by Devin. It hasn't gone out yet to the consultants. Pam Mullen is absolutely wonderful. She has files on her folders in her computer with all the previous grants, all the previous grant applications, probably all the contracts, all the RFPs. So she has been a great help in giving us information about what has been in the past. So we will certainly work with whoever might sign this as close as we can to mitigate the amount of time that anyone needs to spend. I mean, part of it is going to be keeping track of hours. I can't write the contract because that's certainly, beyond what I can do, but I'm sure, you could look at other contracts in the past that have been submitted and, go from there. So hopefully it's not an enormous burden.
So we might have the cost of legal preparing a contract.
I think it's a possibility.
Okay. And what benefit accrues to these houses?
Well, I think, to me, obviously in favor of historic preservation. When you live in a historic district or have an historic home or have been identified as, to me, it adds value to the property that you have. It sort of tells other people coming into town that this place is special because, the village is on the National Register. The infill of the homes on Jones Circle in the 1950s, right in the middle of a 19th century, landscape is really very fun. This may be, and I don't know how many other prefabricated houses. This is assuming that our nomination to the National Register is successful. I don't know how many other prefab houses as an historic district have been put on the National Register. But this is something that is important to Vermont, I would think, in addition to Norwich. We did get the grant and they could have said, no, we're not interested. So I think that they value this bit of investigation and it'd be wonderful to learn its history.
Okay, thank you.
So we're still being asked to execute this, that's all.
Well, authorize the signature, yes.
We're gonna have all the white space for the grant here. So we just approved applying for a grant. Which is actually awarded the grant, we just have to execute the contract. And then later in the agenda, we're gonna be looking at closing out a grant. So they're
I think somebody gave us an elephant and we have to say, yes, we'll take it.
But I also think normally we wouldn't have to do that. This would be normally in the prerogative of the town manager to do.
I think this actually has to authorize this.
Authorize the grant, like, why would we have to authorize you to sign it if you would have like Title 24 powers?
That's a good question. But
Yeah,
I'm
so
pretty sure.
I'm happy to do it, but like this discussion is like really sort of out of the ordinary.
All right, so we call the question. Oh, we have a motion.
I move to execute the grant agreement for the Jones Circle Historic District National Register nomination.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
That was Pam?
Pam, yes.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks for coming in.
Safe trip home.
All right, now we're back to 14.
Now we're back to 14. This is request
13.
Oh, it's 13.
13.
Ooh,
Sorry.
yes, you're right.
Public safety facility overdraft. Brennan, can you lead us through this?
Yes. So what was in the? Which one? I'm sorry. Lost
It's
track.
number 13.
13. Safety facility. Okay.
To do with the
So, our finance director has noticed that there's an overdraft in one of our line items, which is called facilities, and is requesting, I guess, because this is required by the select board, to authorize her to move or reallocate funding out of the police department and out of the fire department, funds, so that the public safety facility fund can be fully covered. So that, I know very little more than that, so if there's specific questions, we might need to go back to Joe to explain. That's what she's proposing.
My only question is, I would be, is it only voters who have the authority to move one fund from one reserve fund to another? Obviously, we have the authority to expend anything from any given reserve fund, but I don't know if we have the authority to transfer funds. So I would say then perhaps we should just do a motion that provides a new funding source. Yeah. Because so is the idea, have these already been paid for and we're just running sort of a deficit on a reserve fund, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's the.
Okay. So then I would say that we would require something, a town meeting that asks, we should close out the other two funds and move it to the public facility fund and ask the voters to do that. I think historically we didn't do that because one of the departments had a particular reason for wanting to keep their reserve funds separate. So anyway, so I don't actually think we have the authority to take action on this.
Okay.
And just Cam, agree?
Pam, sorry.
I agree with Roger, we do not have the authority, it's only the voters, and I think we need to do a comprehensive study of all of these funds and whether they are still active and needed, or should we be closing them out and asking the voters to repurpose them for something else? I went back and looked at what was approved at the select board meeting on August 10th. The request came from Ryan Francis. Suggested motion was that the town manager purchase 3 15-inch solar powered traffic logic signs with source wall, including a 3-year warranty. Poles and necessary hardware for people purchase from not to exceed $12,000 to be paid out of the public safety facility fund. And then it gave an account number for speed signs out of the community policing budget. So it was contradictory. The public safety facility fund had $0 in it. This had $0 in it since we borrowed $242,000 to pay off a shortfall for work that was done over and above what was approved by the voters. So the speed sign, we budget $2,000 a year. We spend $6,000 a year on electricity. And we continue to budget $2,000 a year for a $6,000 expense. But that was apparently the intent was to book it to an expense line item. So that the select board has the authority to move to pay for that out of that already overspent account.
Well, can I ask us a maybe naive question? Why wouldn't we reclassify those? That's not really,
Because you do not have the authority to do that.
if they were misclassified.
What do you mean what was misclassified?
So
If I'm just saying, if somebody said we're going to take, buy donuts out of X fund and it should have been out of another fund, that's not really changing what people have voted for. It's correcting an error. Was this classified in error?
right.
So we wouldn't be moving funds, we'd actually be fixing an error, which would right the deficit.
But are you using the fund for its intended purpose? Fund number 10 is a police station fund. I don't know that speed signs have anything to do with the police station. And fund 15 is, or 25 is a fire station fund. So, and I'm not even sure that it makes sense to make it out of the public safety facility fund because it doesn't really speak to the purpose of that reserve fund. So,
Well, public safety facilities can be broadly defined. I would be more comfortable with it coming with speed signs coming out of a public safety facility than
right, but we have a
specifically
line
facility.
item. we have a line item called speed signs, and it's in the community policing budget. And that's the account number that was given by the former town manager with the title of Public Safety Facility Reserve Fund.
So Pam, how much money is in that fund, the speed sign fund?
It's overspent. We budgeted $2,000, we've spent $6,331.29 as of February 28th.
Not for the particular seats, but for the community policing fund overall.
No, that's for the speed signs.
Well, maybe not for the speed signs, but maybe for that fund in its entirety.
No, this is a line item expense. We budget $2,000 for the expense, and we have spent $6,331.29. We are at 316.56% of budget.
So are you speaking, I'm sorry, are you speaking about an expense in an operating budget?
Yes,
Okay, so.
and that was the account number that Rod gave for that purpose.
Okay, so in the interest of Marcia's point, if I may,
Yes.
of there being, sort of, could it be possible that the motion was poorly constructed and that some of the funds are going to come from the community policing line as well as the public facility line? And if they were divided between the two, would that have led to an overdrawn account on one of them? That might be a question.
They
I might ask.
would both be overdrawn.
Okay, so no.
So it's a question of not asking the question, do we have money in that fund? Because that was a fund that was at zero, has been at zero since 2020. And the loan was taken out to zero it out. And then in 2022, you're asked to spend money out of a fund that has zero. And nobody said, gee, do we have any money?
So looking ahead here, the statute for reserve funds says that you have to use it for the specific purpose and it can be carried forward into subsequent fiscal years. But there's nothing about saying you can't overspend it. So I'm suggesting maybe we don't do anything now because there's nothing that requires us to do something. And then I've started a Excel spreadsheet with actions so that it's searchable and we can follow it up. And I can put this on there as something that we'll put on the warrant for the next town meeting to fix. How does that sound? How does that sound to you?
Sounds fine to me. I think Joyce's reasoning here is that she wanted to clear up the overspent line. But she misunderstood how this works and this actually requires a voter approval. That's fine. We can save it, do it all at one time.
And which is say right that I don't.
Wait,
That-
one at a time project?
That's my hunch, but I don't actually, I mean, I don't think.
Joyce,
That might not be the definitive.
and Joyce, no, she's saying that she requires a motion from the select board. So I
Come back.
assume you should research that and that's her understanding of how this works, whether that's correct or not.
And
That's right.
and I really do believe that we always should defer to like the expertise of our town staff. So I guess I don't necessarily want to go against that contradiction, but
Well,
I do think I don't want to go against the contradiction. I want to, but I do think it's wrong.
Okay, well, it's not her Joyce's feelings. Yes,
Okay, all right, sorry.
Well, I
Approved because we felt the voters had to authorize this, and she can come back and say, no, because of this, and we bring this back, I guess.
So Marcia, what Priscilla was presenting to me was an updated budget report for through March, through period 9.
Yeah.
And the speed signs, apparently there's been some reclass of those electricity expenses. So now it's saying out of a $2,000 budget, we've only spent $796.53. So I remember seeing something about electricity costs needing to be reclassed because they weren't spread across all the departments correctly.
Right.
So it looks like we're down to just under $800 on that. So we have about $1,200 in the speed sign budget that we haven't spent, but we still have 3 months to go.
I don't know why people assume that's electric, because I can't tell.
Because I read up what goes into that and it's electricity.
Okay, so where we agreed that we will have this on the warrant for the voters to authorize the movement of, but I'm still not sure. Are we talking about closing out the police station and the fire station accounts and just putting it all under public safety?
That's what Joyce would like.
Okay, so authorize the closing of accounts 10 and 20, or funds 10 and 25.
I don't understand how this solves the problem.
You
can't
retroactively and move the money into the public safety.
Right, that doesn't solve this problem because you can't retroactively move the money. It's
Well-
gonna be a move as of July 1 of 2025.
I think the thing is, as far as we know, we're not violating any law by having this fund overspent.
So this is just gonna be part of kind of what we monitor on the budget as we get to the end of the year and decide if we need to cover any deficit.
Right. And I guess tangentially cleaning up the list of funds, because sometimes they may not be useful anymore.
And there are some funds that have been established that have never had a clear charge for them, like that climate change, $40,000. There was never a clear understanding of what that would be used for.
To be continued.
I mean, there are also funds that, you know, have like not
Oh,
done anything
yeah.
with, like affordable housing. Like
Right.
when was the last time affordable housing had any movements?
Right.
Okay,
You know, there's-
are we finished with this one? All right, let's move on to number 14. The Finance Department requests to write off small amounts of underpaid property tax. Brennan, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, I think the memo is fairly clear that it was created here. There are small amounts of money, sitting there in accounts, which probably don't warrant in some cases sending out postage to try to collect. So Joyce's, thought here is we can pick a number, either $2 collect, $5 collect, that we would just basically, write off as, a small amount, and that would just clean up the books on her end. We're talking about less than $5 or less than 11.25 exactly. I guess. So it's kind of a small amount of funding here, which she's trying to do some housekeeping.
Good. Any questions, concerns?
What's the authority of this select board to do that?
I don't know. This came again from Joyce feeling that she wasn't authorized just to do it. This would be something we would do. In this case, it's a one-time with select board approval, and then this would be written into a policy as her second piece, which we're not asking to do tonight, but when we review and reaffirm policies, that would be the reason. That would be the motive.
Roger?
This is tax collector.
Yes.
Okay, so the tax collector has historically been the town manager, but given the unique situation of the agreement, that's why I say it's before us. So I would say that this is maybe something under the authority of the delinquent tax collector to do, but
Well, since we set the town tax, I would sort of say,
but
let's
now.
start collecting it, and we probably would have to think about this.
But yes, so I would say it's before us because of just our unique circumstances, not because it normally would be. That's what I'm gonna say.
I'm not sure, because we do set the tax rate, but anyway, Priscilla.
Should we ask our town treasurer if she has any thoughts on whether this is a good idea or a legal thing, whatever? I don't know.
Ms. Treasurer, would you like to come to the podium?
Sure, Cheryl Lindenberg. I did reach out to the Clerks and Treasurers Association listserv, which is valuable, and there was a couple of different recommendations that were made in that process. I do believe that the only authority that could exist for this, from what I read, was with the select board. That the delinquent tax collector doesn't actually have that authority. So again, basing this on a list survey
Thing on the listserv, yeah.
yeah, and of course, you know, clerks and treasurers that are helping their towns. And then I believe there was some, that have a small balance policy that is established, and the select board would be, in charge of that. And so there is that option to have you do this and then have a policy for $3 and under, or $5, whatever you're thinking it is.
That's specifically what Joyce is requesting.
And that's a-
I think it should come from the delinquent tax collector, in my opinion, but again, it's coming through your staff person, so, that's the only other minor.
Well, to some extent, it depending on how many times we send out a letter asking for payment, we've spent more than $2.
Seems to go to 66 cents pretty soon.
Really?
And the time of our staff to collect it.
But who would write this policy? Would that be part of the master financial policy, that the select board would write? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah. So the question would be, do we want to authorize a one-time motion right now and choose an amount? Do we want to hold off and fold this into policies, which I'm going to be pushing that we, be working on post haste?
I would make a motion to make this a one-time write-off. We develop this as part of our master financial policy.
Okay, Mary, you had something?
No, I'd like that Pam would just move that, that seems perfect. And did you just move that, Pam?
I did.
Good.
Could I just ask, can you put an amount, whether it's the $2 or $5, that should be the motion?
I think we go with the $5, anything under $5.
I'll
So,
second it.
so Pam made that motion for $5, seconded by Mary. Any further discussion? I make a friendly amendment that we will review this in the delinquent tax policy.
I did say that in my motion.
She did say that.
Okay.
That it's a one-time write-off of delinquent tax amounts of less than $5, and that we will make this part of our master financial policy review.
So to be made part of the master financial policy.
Review.
I mean, it's really an amendment to the delinquent tax.
I would say,
Part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Delinquent tax policy. So that would be part of the master financial plan delinquent tax policy.
Yes, you made a motion to agree
I'll
to
get that.
review it rather than, anyway.
Right, it is a one, right?
One time, and we need to talk about this.
Okay. May I call the question? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. It's almost 9 o'clock. We're within a little bit of spitting distance, but does anyone need a stretch? Or should we just keep rolling?
I think it'll be good.
I think a break would be nice,
Okay,
but not too long.
10-minute stretch,
Or 5.
5-minute stretch. We will be back at 5 to 9.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. It is about 3 minutes to 9 or 2 minutes to 9, and we are back in session. And we are now on number 15, the amended resolution for the municipal planning grant. Brennan.
Okay, so as I mentioned, we have our 3 cycles here. This is now reaching the closeout stage for this grant. This was started back under different personnel. So in order for us to be able to go in to this, we need to amend the original grant agreement, and we have put my name down as interim town manager, Miranda, in her capacity, which will be dealing with grants, and we're just asking the select board to approve the amendment to the original grant, and then we'll be able to close this out and we can come back. Once that occurs, and give a kind of snapshot of what was done and how what the project was and what the product was that came from that. But this was a density. This is a density study that was done.
Oh, yeah.
I guess to assist the planning commission with some thoughts or work around the land use plan. And the study has been completed, and it's I don't know how helpful it was, but it's done and will be a resource going forward.
So to close it, we need to correct the names because the names who are on it can't close it. They're no longer here.
That is the short of it, yes.
So it's just housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
Yes, what important housekeeping.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, I move to approve the amended resolution for municipal planning grant as presented.
Do we have a second? Second by Priscilla. Any further discussion? May I call the question? All in favor? Roger, yes, okay, unanimous. Thank you very much. Next, we need to look at some liquor licenses, and to do that, we have to adjourn as a select board and then
Recess.
recess, sorry, not adjourn.
Yeah, we can do this.
What do I do? Everybody? Sorry, everyone has to sign on the back of this.
Oh, this is the amended,
Yes,
right here.
right.
Yeah, I think anywhere on those lines.
Okay, next, so we need to make a motion. Is there a motion to recess the select board meeting?
Yes, so moved.
Do we have a second? Second by Priscilla. Pam.
One of these keys.
I'm gonna start calling you by your last name. And any discussion, or shall we call a question? Call a question. All in favor? Unanimous.
And what's the time?
And the time is 9:01. We are recessed. Is there a motion to now convene as the Norwich Liquor Commission?
Oh,
So moved by Priscilla. Is there a second?
a second.
Seconded by Mary. All in favor? Aye. Okay. So now, we have one for the Norwich wines and one for Carpenter and Maine, and I think for their patio as well.
No, we've got 3 for. That's your name, and then it falls ahead.
I thought maybe, but I couldn't find.
Well, they have one for a first class restaurant bar, that's 1,550, and then a third class restaurant bar, that's 1,000, and then for the outlet consumption permit.
And also the motion does say applications.
Right. So that would cover all of them.
The restaurant, the bar, and the else.
Yes. I don't know what first class and third class difference is, because either one of those restaurants slash bar.
First class and probably beer bar.
I don't know.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve these liquor license applications?
I move to approve liquor license applications for Carpenter, Maine and Norwich Wine and Spirits.
Do we have a second?
wonder.
Then we can have a discussion.
I'll second.
Second by Pam. Any discussion?
I wonder if the motion should say instead of Carpenter name, his LLC is very involved there.
I wondered about that, but then I wondered because the business itself.
But it's just it's their license name and it's a Carpenter and the license name, someone being here.
That's part of that.
Yeah, it says like foundational license.
Yeah.
So it says the licensee name is, so.
Carpenter name.
Oh, okay.
I think we're fine.
Okay, so I think that's right. Any more discussion, or should we call the question? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you very much. Is there a motion to close the Norwich Liquor Commission session and reconvene the select board meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Mary, we have a second.
I'll second.
Pam seconded it. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Thank you, unanimous.
Reconvene in record speed.
Meeting at 9:04.
Wow.
Real efficient. All right. The next item. We are really doing some interesting things tonight. The National Prescription Opiate Litigation. This involves a class action suit, and if we were to join this class action suit, we, the town, would be precluded from filing a claim against these defendants as an individual town.
Can you say that again?
Yes. If this town decided to vote to be part of the class action suit with a lot of other defendants, we would not be able to individually sue.
Okay, so it's one or the other.
Right.
I see.
And therefore, council advises the select board to vote to authorize that participation. So to begin a discussion, shall we first have a motion?
I move to join the new national opioid settlements and authorize the interim town manager to execute the settlement documents.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Roger. I'd like to hear anything that Brendan has to say about this.
I don't have much to say. Most of the municipalities have already sought out a little bit, and the deadline is, I think, it's the 18th for this. So we get this done tonight, and I can sign the documents tomorrow.
My only concern is the use of the monies, and obviously there would be some constraints, but I think from what I saw that some of it was perhaps educational. And so
the state's receiving a significant portion of this, and they have set up their own which programs, and then I think it would fall to the municipality to decide how to use this for whatever purposes, and yeah, to be determined, I guess, once we know how much money we would be receiving as a municipality.
okay. And so I would think that we would need to have this as an agenda item in the event we're awarded any money to decide how to use it. Okay. So the question is, I suppose we could not do anything. We don't have to say that we would join this class action suit, or vote to authorize Brennan to sign so that the town is joined, or hold off if there's any idea that the town would be suing these defendants themselves, which I would find unlikely. Pam.
I'm seeing this so late in the day, I've not had a chance to read it and understand what I would be voting on, so I'm not ready to voice something.
Okay, and you said the deadline was
Well, it's 18th.
the 18th.
I thought, yeah, I read it. Which is like, we don't have time for now, another meeting.
Right. So I do think that there would be productive uses that the town could put the money to, were we to be awarded it. I think it is extremely unlikely that we would want to file any suit ourselves.
Especially if our legal bill.
Well, I think the defendants are things like CVS and Walgreens. So I would call a question, I guess. All in favor of this? Roger, did you have something else to say?
No, I'm ready to go, sorry.
All right, all in favor? We'll call the question, roll call. Priscilla?
Yes.
Pam, Stain, Roger?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Marcia, yes. Motion passes with one abstention. All right, under discussion items, I had just put in a draft that I did of an accounting, auditing, and financial reporting policy. I think also in there is the VLCT model, and it's kind of based on that. We have these policies ourselves. They're complex. They were last approved in 2020, and I think we need to review them. The cash receipts and petty cash and return check policy, same thing. I did this in conjunction with looking at those financial roles and responsibilities with the work that we've done with the task 2. And I've included those for that purpose, just so that we can start thinking about this. But I think we need to revisit these policies as soon as possible. And I would look to the board for a discussion, how you want to do this. The last time we did this, we sort of started one policy after another, and it was long and painful. We could maybe have 2 people work on a couple of them, but we did that before, and it was still long and painful. Mary, do you have a suggestion?
No, I got a comment on the cash receipts, petty cash, and return check policy. Just that presented kind of assumes there will be cash. Like we had an idea about a debit card or an electronic system, and I noticed it does emphasize receipts. And I think that I've never seen a receipt out at the DPW, for instance. I just think that one might sort of need a modernization update. And I can't really speak to the other one. That's more in the wheelhouse of financial people, the accounting, auditing, and financial reporting. I think that a good, strong, I'm going to call it template, but something of that nature that's recommended by VLCT or, our auditors goes a long way to kind of remove a lot of stuff that we would have to talk about. If we could get a really strong template for some of this, and then just focus on pieces that might be problematic. So
would you like me to just finish going through the VLCT models and sort of tweak them so that they're Norwich centric, and then present them juxtaposed with the ones that we have, so that you can all do some homework, look at it, and then come back? We could have
So are you talking about getting into our master financial policy and doing side by side? I see. Well, maybe. But there's still going to be a lot to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've just gone through a very, I thought, productive exercise with this TAP 2 review. And based on that, I think we can inform those policies, but start with, as Mary said, the model policies from VLTC. And then we could, for reference, look back at the ones that we've already drafted to see if we wanted to save any parts of those or scrap the VLTC one. Plus, as Mary brings up, if we're going to do something modernizing, like, which hasn't been decided yet as far as I know, with the transfer station, for example, then that would have to be built into that as well. But I'm just looking for a way forward so that we can start shaking this out and getting it updated. Roger?
What are the most important improvements that need to be made in order to attract a hire? Like, what changes need to be made in order to signal that we have addressed some structural problems and that a hire would want to come here?
I think
because because these policies have we've looked at them a lot. It's really the practices and the procedures and the personnel, the elected officials that are the pieces, not the words on the page.
And I think that that's what we hammered out last week. So I think that that's the attraction.
The attraction is that we had a meeting.
Nope, the attraction is that we have gone through and organized who does what.
Oh, so I would love to see that.
Yeah,
That's what I said, I had finished and the finance director and the treasurer have reviewed it. And now what I'm gonna do is take it and sort of say, okay, these are the policies that this office is gonna write and the procedures underpinning them, and then simultaneously the ones that this other office is gonna do.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds different than what you were proposing, but I like that.
so would that,
Is that, you know what I mean?
Said it differently, but that's where I've been headed.
Okay.
so you have your piece and then the treasurer and finance director have their pieces. When would they all be available to
Yeah.
look at?
Some of these, like the cash policies and stuff, they're informed by what the policies of the individual offices are doing. So let me play with it some more and give you some more product. How's that?
Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead. Just knowing that the, I don't know, the cash situation at DPW, just having petty cash has been just an issue for years since the Herb days. So, I mean, it's relatively small amount of money, but I think it just is something that needs to be cleaned up.
And the
auditors brought it out quite a bit, so.
Right.
Okay.
Pam was first.
Yeah.
Well, we already made a great suggestion a couple of meetings ago about having a card instead of using cash to pay for a refrigerator or a mattress or whatever people are dropping off that isn't, recycling or the bags of trash. And I gave that a lot of thought and I thought, well, why don't we just use the green cards? You know, if you drop off a mattress and it's $10, it's $2, it's on your trash card.
I would switch them in.
And we would not have the sale of these cards and the permits at the transfer station. They'd have to come to Tracy Hall. We need to have people in their office ready to sell these cards and permits when they're.
But that doesn't help the folks on the weekend. That's the problem, right? Some people.
Well, then the other thing you can do is you have a petty cash, but it's a very controlled petty cash that, they get so many cards, they get so many permits. They either turn in the permits or the cash and it all balances out so that it's whatever that final number is. If they get $500 worth of permits and trash cards, then to turn back in $500 worth of money or cards and permits.
I think that is something that
it's a standard petty cash.
Well, if I could, I'll just suggest another idea, which is what was done in Rutland Town in my transfer station, which is you accept only checks.
Yeah, you have no petty cash.
So
The policy is no petty cash.
you can buy your punch card, and you can't buy the cash. That would seem to solve that.
But then the other part is if they're dropping off a mattress and we're charging them for it,
Yeah.
they would have to pay with a check or they would have to use their trash card or.
It just eliminates the cash.
Right.
Right, so checks for anything that they would pay for at the transfer station. That could
That's
work.
nice and simple. I like the simplicity of that.
There's still work to be done, but I think we just need to.
I'd like to see us do a special meeting for this because it could be very time consuming and to go over this policy. And to try to get it in particular. Well, the master financial policy, and to try to fit it into our regular agenda would be crushing.
Well, from my limited past experience, one meeting wouldn't do it. We had to do the whole policy. It takes a
Well,
long.
we might pick out certain critical parts that need attention.
We did them in the course of 2 months, so I think we did it in like six to 8 meetings, the three of us, Claudia, you and I.
Something like that, but it is time consuming.
But after that, we were 6 special meetings.
Yeah.
Well, then after that, we had all of us working.
And then we were supposed to affirm that, and then we ended up revising them.
Right.
So,
It's hard not to get bogged down in it.
so I might,
Yes, Russ.
so So I think so I agree with the suggestion that someone takes a leadership role in this, and if you're volunteering, like, that's wonderful, I appreciate that. What I would say, so I said I'm interested in like sort of practices and procedures and personnel, more so than just the policy on the paper. We need to understand how the policy on the paper is effectuated, right? And so I think if I might suggest a process, I would like to know, the problem as the problem, how, and then maybe how the parties see or understand the problem, and then what the solution was. So I guess more so than like revising what's on the page, I would like to see some kind of like presentation or walkthrough of this was identified as a problem by whomever. This was this consensus on it, and this was what was decided on.
Well,
So I will.
in my little book here.
So it's also I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna preview it, but I'm just saying that would be, I guess, my expectation of the task.
Yeah.
While knowing also full well that it's like a great task, and so I don't want to like dictate anyone who's willing to volunteer to do that, but nonetheless, you get the gist.
Well, let's start with this. I will finish up. This was the draft that I did and sent out to everybody, and it doesn't have their comments on it yet. But it's done, and I've put the comments in. So all I have to do is kind of reprint it. And I think the surprising thing was there were fewer differences of viewpoints. And I think what we have now is a clear path for each office of how they operate and how they intersect.
I'd like to see the, just see the paper. Sounds good. Sounds very good. But
all right, so with that, that's what you'll get for next time from me, and then I can do something. I'm not going to go crazy on the financial policies, but maybe try and do something.
Do you want to do that in May? Well, I guess the next item is that future agenda items now?
Right, yep. Well, this thing is done, so I can do that for next week, next time.
So you give about something informational and then discussion and such.
This work is basically the product of sitting down and talking through various things that seem problematic.
Okay.
And then getting everyone to look over what I wrote based on the meeting.
Okay.
Then that has now become one document, which has colors for everybody.
I just don't doubt that.
And then
Yeah.
from that, I'm going to tease out. This office is going to write these policies based on this document, and then they have to write the procedures that underpin it. And there are some procedures that, we're going to have a buy-in to too, because things that have been problematic are things like passwords. And so we have to have a mechanism for how passwords are managed and how we have onboarding and offboarding, so that when somebody comes, there is a person who gives them the passwords that they need, and when they leave, the password is taken away. So all of those things that are just sort of natural in bigger organizations, I think we can easily employ.
and some of it might cross over in personnel, because the password,
That's right.
part sounds like a personnel.
Yeah, like
function.
you can't call them or give
And
them
that's-
whatever password.
That's where I think we get involved.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that sounds like great progress.
Well, it's a step in the right direction, don't you think?
I thought it was great.
Yeah. Perfect. I am grateful. All right, so that brings us to the next meeting, which we already know we're going to talk about the interim town manager contract. And I guess as a byproduct of that, we can maybe start talking about the search. And then police issues.
What are police issues? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Do we have any expenditure requests, spending requests? How about, okay, so that's not an issue, but.
Well,
Issue maybe.
That's an expenditure.
More negative, but yeah, there is some discussion about, yeah, using funds for different purposes.
And then I think the elephant on the table.
That's very.
Okay, it's fine. I can send that. Cool.
Well,
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
and I also think that the elephant on the table is that we had the advisory vote, and I think that we just need to make a decision and a statement about how we think about that advisory vote. But that is separate, but that's why I put down the issues, because I think there's going to be a presentation by the chief about things he needs or whatever, and then this, but that's why
I assume you need body cameras is not the issue. Well, you're gonna have to wait. Okay, great.
I would like to ask that the request from any department be in writing, because I got so confused last time on the DPW grounds person and how they're accepted with rec, and I need something on paper that I can read and digest. And I want to make evidence-based decisions, and if I'm just listening to people talking, I can't keep up with it. I need it on paper. Numbers, facts.
Mary.
I agree with Pam. It's always better. And also if it doesn't come in at 5:05, it's also appreciated. When possible, something is not possible to do that. I'm greatly irritated by our advisory vote, and I backed that vote because I wanted the temperature of the town. And now I really feel that we're being, it's almost like it's perceived as a mandate to hire a fifth police officer. And I just don't agree with that. And I think, you know, if we were going to take it into account, I think it might be during budget season, not now. And I don't like being badgered about it.
I agree.
Every single meeting or with correspondence, you know, I just think it's just going a little overboard.
Well, I have advised that what goes on the agenda is presented, and then it can be voted yes or no to be on the agenda. And it seemed to me that this is part of police issues, but if all of you decide that you don't want to talk about this, then about the advisory vote, then we don't have to do that. It doesn't have to be on the agenda.
But Marcia, talking about it can mean that you're like me, irritated because it was an advisory vote and it keeps coming up. Or talking about it could be, oh yeah, we should really do this, and it does make a difference.
Right. How do we get items presented makes a big difference, which is sort of my point. So I think if we're being requested for an expenditure, it should say expenditure request for the purchase of. Like I don't want to see any agenda item that says police issues.
Well,
like,
as you know,
this is ridiculous.
This is a notebook.
I understand.
And so when we put this together, it's gonna go to all of you because we've got 2 weeks and there'll be time for you to all look at it.
And so in the spirit of what Mary's saying, like if those are two separate issues, they need to be on the agenda as two separate issues accordingly. And in the spirit of them being two separate agenda items, and this is a future agenda item discussion, I similarly don't need to talk about the advisory vote because it was advisory. I received the advice, and we will have a forthcoming budget discussion. So I'm waiting on that future agenda item.
And that's basically been what I've said to everyone, that we have put our budget together and there will be another budget session coming up in the fall. And when that happens, that's the appropriate time to think about this.
It also could be, as Pam saying, having data-driven decisions.
Right.
But what is the case for it?
Right.
And it's very, I don't think it's good policy just to have, you know, people show up who feel emotional about it, but you don't have the facts in front of you. I mean, is this really a good idea or not? I think we need the written case for why or why not.
Well, I think what I was going to present was simply do you want to make a statement or not about how we're going to proceed, which could simply be, we're waiting until the budget season, which is what I've been thinking we would do, but that's up to the board. So, because right now we don't have budgeted money for a fifth position.
Right, and it sounds like with police issues, because this is stated in a very ambiguous way, that, you know, that advisory vote is something that I could see could be framed for an agenda item. But then I'm also hearing that perhaps there might be a request for some monetary support. So that's a completely different subgroup. You can do A, B, C, D under police issues, but in itself, this is quite vague.
Well, that's a notebook. And
I know that. I'm just saying.
That's to be that one, sorry.
I agree with you, and I have talked to the person who has been most vocal, and I've said, you keep talking about 681 people who have voted for this advisory article, and yet we're only hearing from one person. And we don't have any information from the police department about are there shifts that are not being covered, that we would need a fifth officer to cover those shifts. And the other thing is, we only got a full complement on March 6th when Sergeant Rogers came on. And so we finally have one report where he's been with us for 3 weeks. And I think we need to see several months of these reports to see how are things when we didn't have a full complement, and how are things now that we do have a full complement? Are they improving? Are they getting worse? Are they staying the same? You know, what's the comparison? Like I said, I want to make evidence-based decisions. And at this point, all I have is anecdotal information.
At this point, we're treating this like it was on the agenda, and it's not. So
No, we're just trying to frame it.
I think you're learning a lot about how to discuss this in the future, like how we want this agenda to frame.
So I think we need evidence, and it's too early for that evidence to come in, and that's evidence that could probably inform the next budget cycle. Because it's going to take several months.
Priscilla.
I think that we're getting a little premature on this. This is actually on the budget and on the agenda, and some members of the board are already kind of indicating where they want to go on it. I think we need to hear from the police chief and let him present his side of what's going to be going on. One of the things I know from going to the Coffee with the Cops, which I do every time, one of our officers, these Chelsea Maxim, is going to be gone for, I forget, 13 weeks, 16 weeks in training. So we will effectively be down one officer for a long time. I don't, what is the effect of that? Is there an overtime? I don't know. I want to hear from the chief. And I feel that the chief, when the chief came on, he was told he was going to be supported, and I don't know if he feels supported or not. I think we should ask him that. But I'm hoping he would give us a good recommendation and have it, if he's listening, in writing, in time for us to digest what he's presenting.
Well, his supervisor is listening, so.
I said, you know, we haven't seen a shift schedule, we don't know what's being done, but it's. So that's part of what we need to learn.
No, I think it's good to give them a chunk of time on the agenda.
So,
I agree with that.
ladies and gentlemen, so next week, we are going to have next meeting.
Next
meeting.
I mean, I don't know what I mean more because, you know, I agree with Jen on this board and bitches about it.
I know, it's,
Yeah, by long tenure instead of non-statutory, right?
well, makes some time.
So we are going to have something that will be framed by the town manager for hearing, I don't know how you're going to write it, but from the police chief. Okay? And then
How about a memo from the police?
a memo from the police chief, that would be good.
And it would be great if it appeared in the packet before it appeared on the list. That would be beautiful.
I think everyone on this said that.
Okay,
Like in the packet, like so it appears before the board, before it appears before the public. That would be great.
okay, so a police chief memo in the packet first. And then, second of all, I'm hearing 3 people say that they want to wait until at least the budget season and have more data before there's a discussion about the police officer.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, so we could put that in the minutes that based on the majority of the board, there will be a request for evidence-based information in time for budget season and the issue of a fifth police officer. That was inelegantly put, but you get the gist. Then the next item on my notebook is HR and personnel policies, and that gets to what we were just talking about, and blends in the financial policies and procedures. And then I'm sure that a lot of things will come in the door of the town manager's office, which will be added to this.
They most certainly will.
Appointments,
I can think of one, which I don't think it's going to be terribly complex, but we didn't add it into the packet or agenda today, because it came in late. But we are asked to sign, the select board has been asked to sign a certificate of compliance for our town roads and bridges standards. And it's, I think, just a normal thing that we do, but again, we didn't want to add it on late today, so they'll go in for the 26th, and then it has to be filed by the end of April. So it will have to be something that is approved or not approved.
Okay.
So, and Martin, is there a plan for appointments? Because I saw an advertisement when I was great.
Yeah, that's also something that will, I think, be, I assume the way it's normally done is we will accept applications up to a certain period of time. Those will then go into the packet or for review by the select board, and then the 26th will have to have probably a pretty significant amount of time for those to be discussed and appointed.
Right, so I guess what I'm saying is I'll defer to you and Marsha, that could easily take 2 hours.
We also have the finance report coming in the second meeting of the month. I would like to request that the report that is provided to us be a report from NEMRIC, our financial Bible. I don't want to see reports out of spreadsheets, because we've already proven that entry errors have happened.
Well, Pam, what we determined through our work was that everything is coming from NEMRIC. But as I suspected, there are three ways actually. One is an old-fashioned way that you can get a report. One is a PDF, and that's what you've seen, and the other is an Excel spreadsheet. And the Excel spreadsheet has been the preference of the board, in which we can talk about it going forward. And the reason is because the finance director has put in, using Excel, little pie charts and graphs and things that the board has liked. So it's all coming from NEMRIC. The thing that is not in NEMRIC right now is, give me the name of it.
The revenue budget numbers.
The revenue budget numbers. Those will be put in there. And when they are put in there, then when you press that button that you like, that gives you the PDF and has 3 columns, then it would be filled in. But the prior financial director used an Excel workbook to keep track of those. Say it again, I'm so sorry, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Well, the revenue and expenditure both are in the Excel workbook.
Yeah.
But they're not being exported, they're being manually entered, and the entries can be entered incorrectly. And they have.
We really went over this, and there wasn't a manual entry that I was told about, and I'll send you this so you can see the answers. I was comfortable, and trust me, I asked a lot of questions, I think, to figure out how things were getting into the system, what was missing, why the reports looked differently. And I think there was fewer discrepancies than you might have thought. Yes, Mary.
Can I talk about something different? Okay. I was noticing on the VLCT sort of little news letter that they put out that they were reminding about ARPA reports. And I just wanted to bring that up, and I've been hearing that the portal is just difficult to access. And that possibly, Brennan, your name needs to be on it instead of Rod's. So I don't know how onerous that's going to be, but the deadline kind of freaked me out. It's on April 30th.
He's on it, go ahead.
So
We're on it.
you're on it.
It's
Okay.
might be going to be difficult and cumbersome to switch people around, but we're on.
Okay, thank you. You know, and if I'd like to hear about it, you know, when the dust settles. So maybe by this meeting, I'd like to hear more about that.
And I may advise that we should cover in this meeting on these things,
As well as possible.
just instead, just because
Oh,
like
oh,
her job description now is appropriate for that, and also like she has a status that's just, you know, her status is different.
One of the things that,
And then we want to change again if we get a different head manager or even like.
and
So,
this goes to my concern about passwords, because the password went away with Rod. And that's the problem.
it may very well have been in the transition document.
I don't think it was, but we can look again.
So the way that works is.
I don't know, entirely need to know what's there's one.
I've seen that. The internal piece here, she gives it 3 roles that are filled within this. So there's an administrative assistant, administrative oversight, which is like the top, and then there's assignments of 2 lesser roles. One can fill out the form, one can submit the forms. They can be all the same person, or they could be multiple people. So once we figure out how to get changed over from what we think is Rod, we don't even know that that's the case, but I believe he was probably the top person there at one point last year. Then I think we can have a discussion of who should be the second or the third, or if it should be multiple people, or if it should be one person that has complete authority over it and the ability to switch them out if somehow there's a change in personnel.
And I gave him information now.
Okay, great. And so in reference, and the only thing anecdotal knowledge I have is that it required a phone call for the authorization, and you, at the time, he was on hold for like hours.
The treasurers.
Yeah, so it requires, so just so you know the investment of your future time. Like, so you're gonna like.
This will not be an easy.
All right, so
And maybe-
I'm sure you are experienced with that, but I'm just anecdotally like it takes hours.
Maybe someone could babysit the phone rather than Todd or Brennan. I'm not kidding, you know.
Well,
Take
we
it over.
are on hold yet, so.
Don't panic.
They're waiting on the enough way that we can figure this out.
Okay.
Having this on the treasury hold,
Right.
which I'm not looking forward to at all, but
Right.
we'll figure it out.
Okay, cool.
So we've got the committee appointments next week. Do we have a new person hired yet?
Oh, yeah, so I'll just say this, so we have a gentleman named Randy Bombard, who was approved at the last, select board meeting, who started on Monday and was a contracted Robert Half employee. So he's here being trained right now with Joyce. He will be here with Joyce over the next 3 weeks until the end of the month, and then we're hoping that he is able to carry the torch forward.
Great.
How long is their contract?
So his contract, I believe, is to the end of June.
Okay.
July, okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think we pretty much got our April 26th agenda, but you'll still see it in a draft. Yeah.
As already you were mentioning, we were gonna talk about the rec admin assistant and also that job description plus the job description for the rec director, and we'd like to have a reading of the meeting.
Right.
Thank you. You're right.
Sorry.
Good catch.
Yep.
Bring your pajamas and toothbrush.
That would be something.
I think I'm gonna object to that. If there's nothing further, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Someone would.
Seconded by Pam.